This is Hugh Harman and Rudolf Ising. The two worked together for much of their careers, but did not create many well-known characters. Perhaps the biggest character either of them made was Barney Bear. The two weren't footnotes, however. The two founded, or at least triggered the founding of, the animation departments at both Warner Bros and MGM. This is their story. Hugh Harman and Rudolf Ising were born in the same month of the same year, August of 1903. Ising was born first, on August 7, 1903, in Kansas City, Missouri. Harman would be born later, on August 31st, in Pagosa Springs, Colorado. Unfortunately, we have no idea what they did in their youngest years. Nothing. At some point, however, Hugh Harman and his brother, Fred, moved to Kansas City. In Kansas City, Fred worked at the Kansas City Slide Company with Walt Disney and Iworks. When those two left to form Leffigram in 1922, Fred came with, and brother Hugh, joined the staff of Leffigram as well. Around this time, Rudolf Ising saw an ad for an animator at Leffigram and applied. He got the job and met Hugh Harman. Leffigram would go bust in 1923, and most of the studio went west with Disney and Iworks to form a new studio. Except for Harman and Ising. Harman and Ising decided to stay behind and open a studio of their own. This did not last very long, and they went west to work for Disney with the others in 1925. At Disney, the duo worked on Oswald the Lucky Rabbit cartoons. Harman and Ising seemingly didn't like Disney very much, as they would later call him abrasive, and Harman would lead the employees choosing to work for Mintz in 1928. Oh yeah, there was a bit of a coup by Mintz in 1928. For a bit of background, Walt Disney and Iworks originally signed a distribution deal with M.J. Winkler Productions to distribute the Oswald cartoons. Disney had worked with them before to distribute the Alice comedies, back when it was run by Margaret Winkler. By 1928, the company was run by her husband, Charles Mintz. Mintz wanted Walt to take a pay cut, so he sent his brother-in-law, George Winkler, to sign deals with the Disney employees to work at a new studio he set up if Walt didn't take it. Walt, unaware of all of this, went to New York to ask for a pay increase to cover the costs of the series, and left without Oswald, most of his staff, or a distribution deal. Harman and Ising were some of the employees that went over to the new Mintz studio to make new Oswald cartoons, before being kicked out themselves in 1929. By then Harman and Ising were sick of this and decided to form their own studio. Again, Harman and Ising formed their own studio, Harman Ising Productions, in 1929, and they already had a character in mind, Bosko. Bosko was a caricature of a black boy, which while would be highly offensive today, was considered appropriate at the time. Some publications would refer to Bosko as being a dog, especially when he appears in the modern era, but the original copyright listing for Bosko would refer to him as a comic character of a Negro boy in various poses. Racism aside, Harman and Ising made a test film, Bosko, the Talking Kid, with Ising himself starring in the cartoon as the animator interacting with a cartoon Bosko. The film was shown to Leon Schlesinger, had a deal with Warner Bros. Schlesinger liked the cartoon, and signed Harman Ising to make Bosko cartoons for Warner Bros. In January of 1930. The series, titled Looney Tunes, besides being fun cartoons to show before movies, more importantly they would also contractually have to feature a Warner Brothers song in every cartoon, giving exposure to Warner's music library, which made the actual Warner Brothers very happy. The first Bosko cartoon, and in turn the first Looney Tune, titled Sinking in the Bathtub, would be released in April 1930. The cartoons would be wildly successful the world over, at least according to Warner Bros. PR, and a sister series, Merry Melodies, would start in 1931. Now with 2 series, Harman would be assigned to direct the Looney Tunes, and Ising would be assigned to work on the Merry Melodies. The first Merry Melody, Lady, Play Your Mandolin, would feature the new character Foxy, who is not at all similar to Mickey Mouse, not at all. Things would go well until 1933, when Harman and Ising got in a dispute with Schlesinger over financial disputes. Harman and Ising also wanted to make color cartoons, which Schlesinger refused to do. Schlesinger cut ties with Harman and Ising in May and formed his own studio, while Harman and Ising kept the rights to Bosko. After a very short stint with Van Buren, Harman and Ising would sign a deal with MGM to distribute their cartoons there. Starting in 1934, Harman and Ising began making color cartoons for MGM, titled Happy Harmonies, which is not at all similar to Looney Tunes or Sully Symphonies, for that matter. They were sorta successful. 1935's The Calico Dragon was nominated for an Oscar. They even brought Bosko back, except this time they made his design even more offensive. The Happy Harmonies cartoons, however, would regularly run over budget, and following a dispute about a distribution contract, MGM would fire them in 1937, replacing them with their own animation division. But all of the directors they chose to replace them, except for Bill and Joe Stunkor, didn't work, so they were rehired in 1938. Harman and Ising left their old studio behind. Literally, the thing went bankrupt apparently and started working on new cartoons. They did not work together as much during this period, if only because they were managing their own units. Harman's biggest accomplishment was his 1939 anti-war cartoon Peace on Earth, probably the best thing he's known for besides Bosko. The cartoon was nominated for an Oscar, but the Nobel Peace Prize. 1939 was not a very good year for peace if one of the top contenders for the Nobel Peace Prize is a cartoon. Ising, on the other hand, created his own character, Barney Bear. Barney Bear was said to be partially based on Ising himself. Ising also produced the first ever Tom and Jerry cartoon, Pooh's Gets the Boot. Ising actually got most of the credit for Pooh's, despite Bill Hanna and Joe Barbera actually making the cartoon. Nevertheless, the cartoon was wildly successful, more successful than any cartoon MGM made prior. Ising would not return for other Tom and Jerry cartoons, as Hanna and Barbera got their own unit at MGM. He also directed the cartoon The Milky Way in 1940, which was also nominated for an Oscar. Harman and Ising was good at getting nominated for Oscars, not so much the winning Oscars part. 1941 would be the end of both their times at MGM, as Harman left to form his own studio, Hugh Harman Productions, and Ising left later that year to join the war effort, making films as part of the 18th Air Force Base Unit, 1st Motion Picture Unit. Hugh Harman Productions did not accomplish much, mostly making shorts for the US military, a bit ironic after just making Peace on Earth, but Harman had big plans for the studio that never materialized. For nearly 2 decades, Harman was planning on making an adaptation of the stories of King Arthur using stop motion. In fact, Harman was working on it for so long, he was still working on it when Ising rejoined in 1946 to form Harman Ising Pictures, not to be confused with their previous studio, Harman Ising Productions. Harman kept talking in the papers about it. He announced more adaptations like Alibaba and the 40 Thieves. He signed a deal with Toei to assist with production. He signed deals with both United Artists and Warner Bros, but nothing ever came out of it. There's not even any footage of it. Most of what the studio did were educational films. Hugh Harman would retire sometime in the 50s and would do interviews about his career for many years. Ising, on the other hand, would work a bit more, working on the bridging sequences for MGM's Tom and Jerry TV package before retiring in the 70s. Harman would die on November 25, 1982 at the age of 79, and Ising would die on July 18, 1992 at the age of 88.